I'm Bernie Hogan from the Network Canvas team. In this video, I'd like to talk about one of the most important and certainly one of the most fundamental acts that we do in a social network interview, and that is the act of collecting data about other individuals, and really more than that, finding out who those individuals are in the first place. There's two main strategies for nominating individuals, or what we would call secondary subjects, in a Network Canvas interview. It depends on your research plan. On one hand, we have research plans where we want someone to nominate from their memory, primarily, people that they know. We would say that those are self-reported networks. On the other hand, we have the case where people have an existing list of individuals. Now, that list might be people in a classroom, people in an office, or maybe a set of locations that you want to link to. Just to point out that Network Canvas is software for collecting data on nodes and the relations between those nodes, but it doesn't necessarily have to be people as the nodes, even if that's convention. So for your data, you may think about either collecting self-reported data or collecting roster data. Now, in Network Canvas, we have ways to do both. If you'll see when you're first examining a Network Canvas study in Architect, you'll imagine that we have a number of stages for collecting different kinds of data. So if we could turn to Architect here now, I've already prepared a data set that I will show afterwards, but I just want to imagine we have no stages here. We want to create a stage first to see that right up at the top, we have sets of name generators. In particular, we have 4 name generators using forms, using quick add, a small roster name generator, and a large roster name generator. The forms one is where you will first nominate an individual, and then in the process of nominating them, you add extra data to that node, as we'd call it, the node. So that data could be anything from the gender, the ethnic or racial background of that person, the amount of time that the participant knows that person, the amount of contact that that participant has. As you can imagine, there are many things about the relationship between the participant and the secondary subject that you could ask about. And in fact, there's often too many things to ask about right up front. And for that reason, that's why we innovated Quick Add. With Quick Add, you can just add names one after the other in kind of rapid succession. That allows people a sort of brainstorming mode. And then once they have those names added, then they can add additional details later using a name interpreter. And I'll show you in a minute how we use the alter form name interpreter in order to get the same data after Quick Add rather than getting it during Quick Add. Now, if you happen to have a list of individuals, such as a classroom, you can use a small roster name generator or a large roster name generator. What's the difference? In a small roster name generator, you're presented with all the names on the screen at once. If you have more names than the screen allows, the bottom is sort of faded a little bit, which affords or makes it seem like it's scrollable. And indeed, the participant can move either with a scroll wheel or with their finger through that list. But sometimes that list can be really long. You know, this might be all the people in an entire firm. The firm might have hundreds or thousands of employees. It might be about locations where there might be such as which clinics have you attended, and there might be hundreds of clinics in the city or the state. So for that reason, the large roster name generator doesn't reveal all of the names ahead of time. Rather, much like autocomplete on Facebook, where you start typing the name of someone and then the name of possible candidates and features about them appears, this works in that way. As you start typing a name, then the names will appear. So it still relies to some extent on self-reporting, but it does so within a roster to help manage that data. Now let's see each of these in use. So as we see here, I've already created a protocol here, first with forms, then quick add, and then we're going to use a thing called the alter form to simulate forms. Then I'm going to show roster small, roster large, and finally, I'm going to show a little bit about how we move data between the different ways of collecting name generators, just to reinforce the fact that you don't need to collect nodes all of the nodes on a single name generator stage. You can use multiple prompts or multiple stages to collect your name generator. So turning now to Network Canvas, we have an example of my favorite my favorite example here. This would be The Simpsons. I use The Simpsons because most people will have some familiarity with this cartoon show, or at least known who they are. So in each of these cases, we can nominate people, by interacting with Network Canvas somehow. So this first one, as we can see here, this is name generator forms. So I'm going to click on this here, and we pop up here. What's this person's name? We can say Homer. We can say they're male, and we can say they're a nuclear safety engineer. No comments on the quality of their of them at their job. We can do that again, and I'll do that again just once with Marge, and it'll say she's female and that she's a. We're just going to stop there. We could add more. We could add the kids, but let's just see how that compares to the quick add feature. Now down below, you'll notice that when we added Homer and then Marge, and it was a bit slow because we had to add more details, more data every time we nominated someone else. Now the problem is for many people, the potential of what we call panel conditioning. That's the idea that when you add somebody in this sort of linear way, the participants wise up to that and go, well, actually, if I add one more name, then that means a whole lot more work. And so they become apprehensive. They become less likely to add the names. So instead, we tend to recommend brainstorming mode. This is this quick add. So you, again, add, but now you see it shows up down in the corner. And now the sort of circle becomes a node icon for Homer. And we have another one here for Marge. And let's add a third one. Let's add Bart, that rapscallion. Okay, and so now we can see the difference between forms and this, but we don't have any data. We don't know Homer or Marge's gender or their occupation and so forth. So in order to do that, we'd have to collect that on a subsequent screen. And that's what we do here. This is the alter forms data. If you want to see that in Architect right here, that is this one right here, name gen quick alters. And the way we would collect that is using the per alter form. We won't detail too much about the per alter form here, except to say that it's really handy. Now, once again, we can say Homer, nuclear safety engineer, Marge, and then homemaker. We could say Bart and troublemaker, even making trouble in the spelling. Okay, and so now you can see we've separated those two. But those are the two ways for free recall. However, if you have a roster, you can perhaps check this out. In what we've done here for a roster is I've created a comma-separated value file, and that file has at the top row name and some other details. And then we import that into Network Canvas, and that allows us to have this roster. So here, perhaps we can say I've selected Homer and Marge. And we can see the rest of the people there. And indeed, Apu and Seymour, two other characters from The Simpsons, are there. They're not in the Simpsons household, however. Finally, this down here is the please nominate people you know. This is the longer of the roster forms. If I type in the box here, what happens if we type in Apu? Oh, excellent. We can type in Apu and add him. You'll see there's a 1 over here in the corner. And then we can also type in Seymour for Seymour Skinner. You'll notice that this number ticks up here. What happens if we try to click away from it? Well, you'll see that nothing appears. And that's because we first in this one have to nominate people like Apu here, Lisa, Maggie, and so forth, and add them in right here. And then when they get added in, then they will show up right here. Now you'll notice that on each of the screens, we nominated people separately. We kept looking for Homer, Marge, and Lisa or Bart, etc. On each of the screens. And you'll notice that the nodes were of different colors. What I actually did here is I created 4 different node types. You could see the different types of nodes. But really, in a study, we tend to want to keep nodes of the same type. And the reason we want to keep them of the same type is because we only ever show one type of node in an interpreter screen or in a sociogram screen. So that means if you want to lay out all of the nodes on a screen, that really means all of the nodes of a single type. Down below here, we have an example of a stage. Please nominate anyone you know in the area from The Simpsons. And we'll see here, people already nominated. So maybe I think Homer's in the area. We can see we can drag Homer from the side here into this main area. And now Homer becomes one of the people nominated in this particular question prompt. But we can also add new people here. Apu, Seymour, Ned, for example, Ned Flanders, and so forth. Now, at this point, Homer or Apu, Seymour, and Ned, we don't have any additional data about them. If we wanted to create additional data about them, we would have to go back to our name generator, like so, and we see we already have the data on Homer and Bart, but now we have a new Apu, Seymour, and Ned. It's for that reason that, well, unlike in this demo, for that reason, normally what you want to do is make sure you get all of your name generators done first and then do your name interpreting questions rather than zigzagging through the interview. But this also helps highlight some of the features and power of Network Canvas in that whenever you create a new node for that node type, it populates back to all the other places where you might see that node type. And that's really handy in case, for example, someone forgets a node and they're like, oh, I really forgot about Grandpa Simpson. And so then if you're here and you add Grandpa, then indeed Grandpa will show up again later on down the line. So it's Homer, Bart, Apu, Seymour, and finally, Grandpa. Now we could see those here in each of our, in the codebook. The codebook is the place that collects all of the different node and edge types. We'll cover edges in a different video, but also where it shows features about them. So you can see here, not only do we have a person used in these different stages with their variables, we also had another person. And this is the one that I created for the blue one for the form data. And then we had another one for the small roster, and finally another one for the large roster. That concludes the tutorial on collecting name generator data in Network Canvas. Thank you.